I'm Greg Powell, and this is Investors Insights.
You're listening to Investors Insights with President and CEO Greg Powell and the Portfolio Strategy Team at Five Plan Partners, Ashley Page and Franklin Bradford.
3, 2.
Welcome to Investors Insights. Today I have Dr. Scott Beaulier, our guest speaker, who is here to share his insight as an economist on the economic future of Alabama. I believe business owners and investors will benefit from what he has to share with us today. Dr. Scott Beaulier is the Executive Director of the Manuel H. Johnson Center for Political Economy at Troy University. He is the Chair of the Division of Economics and Finance and the Adams-Bibby Chair of Free Enterprise. Throughout his career as an economist, he has been actively engaged in the policy arena, both written, academia, and in the public sphere. Dr. Beaulier, welcome to Investors Insights. It's great to have you with us today.
Great to be on, Greg.
So thank you, and talk a little bit about the center and what you do there.
Sure. So we're a center that's committed to engaging students, policymakers, and Alabama state leaders and also national leaders in topics related to free enterprise. I think if you look at data on what's made America great, it's just very clear that the free enterprise system has lifted so many Americans out of poverty over time.
Right.
But that system is not something that's just guaranteed that we should take for granted. We have a lot of forces that are working against it, making us less free. We have a government that's running $17 trillion in debt. We have a Federal Reserve that's printing money like crazy, and a lot of other forces that could compromise the future for our children and grandchildren as well.
Right.
So we're there to more or less engage students in what we think are the big ideas that are going to shape their future.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted you on Investors Insights, I mean, I heard you speak, and the information that you provided was fantastic.
Thank you.
And I thought right on the money, no pun intended, by the way. So, but I've got some questions that I want to ask you.
You bet.
Just, if you could briefly touch on it. We're thrilled also to have you as a guest for a luncheon here today at Five Plan Partners. So the first question I have is, what are the greatest challenges you feel business owners in the state of Alabama are facing?
Sure. So we've been talking about some of the constraints business owners are facing in a book that we've been releasing, Improving Lives in Alabama. One of the big ones are just general uncertainty, regulatory uncertainty, business uncertainty. This is something not unique to Alabamians. Businessmen across the country are facing uncertainties coming down from Washington. The last few months there were announcements about tighter EPA regulations. This is going to hammer businesses here if they have to comply with tight federal regulations on emissions, because we're a state that just from our starting point has a difficult time complying. And now if you ratchet up the standard, it's much more difficult.
Right.
The regulatory environment in general is one that still is too complicated here. Mm-hmm. To start a business, there's a lot of fees and steps and red tape one must go through.
Right.
And this is an area that we could be better. One of the areas that I think is really holding back Alabama that we focus on, though, is just public sector employment, public sector compensation as a fraction of our total workforce. It's way above national averages.
Right.
It's something that it burdens business people when they come.
Sure.
So if they're having to pay significant taxes to the 1 in 8 workers who's a public sector worker, that's going to really make it more difficult to run a business here. They also report on our very weak educational system and our failing schools and some of the challenges we face there. We're consistently 49th or 50th.
Right.
And if you don't have a good, high-quality labor force, you're not going to come to Alabama
I totally
in the first
agree
place.
with that.
So those are the 4 areas that we think are really important for us to get right in helping businessmen.
I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. How do you feel the current trends in technology will impact jobs and businesses in Alabama?
Yeah, so it's a very complicated question. If you look at income data, you see this trend of much greater income inequality over time, and there's a lot of people talking about income inequality and why it's on the rise. I think it has a lot to do with technology. The people who interact with technology well, and the people who are producing gadgets that we all value, the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Steve Jobses of the world, are living like people have never lived before.
Right.
People who have some competence with technology are living all right. But what's happening to the rest is they're more or less flatlining it. Yes, poor people are living better today in that they have better gadgets. They have, the amount of time you need to commit to chores is much lower. but their incomes are more or less flatlining, and that's a 40-year trend. So
Right.
the future for Alabamians with respect to technology is those who are skilled and able to work with it, not necessarily program,
Right.
but program code for computers.
Just like we're doing the
but
vlog
just,
here
but
from
to
the
just be
standpoint
able
to educate
do,
people.
That's right. To
Right.
be able to be competent with social media, you're going to do very well. But if you're not engaged with technology at all, you're going to be left behind, and that's the trend we're seeing across
No,
the country.
we at Five Plan Partners, we totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's as we've embraced technology to communicate and interact more and more with our clients.
Yeah.
We believe that, and we also believe that the financial service industry has been through a big disruption and has more to come. And then in terms of technology, and then also that there are other areas such as education,
Yeah.
government, healthcare, that technology is getting ready to really disrupt those
Absolutely.
business models.
Yep.
Do you think government policies are hurting businesses in Alabama, and which ones?
I do.
You talked
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
Yes,
but
so again,
if
to
you
go-
could elaborate a little
Sure.
bit more on that.
To go back to some of our findings in the book, what's really holding back Alabama's educational system, for example, are things that seem so obvious as ways forward. Very small changes like school choice. 40 states in the country have embraced some form of school choice. Alabama's getting there with the Alabama Accountability Act,
Right.
but it's in the courts. It's a mess. We're not sure
Sure.
if it's going to happen. This is something that's just treating parents and students as customers over their education, and we think it's a huge win if we could move it forward.
Right.
In the areas of like the big budget items that are holding back Alabama, Medicaid has doubled in terms of its
True.
percentage of the budget over the last 10 years.
Right.
The pension program, the RSA, our state pension program, requires a $1 billion contribution each year from Alabama taxpayers because it's $15 billion in the hole. These line items in the budget
That's
are
a great
tremendously
point, by the way.
burdensome. Yeah,
Yeah.
And if you add to that also just our mess that we've made of our Department of Corrections, those three are huge ones that
Right.
productive people are having to pay for, and we just haven't fixed.
Yeah, well, that's one reason, again, why I wanted you to be part of this, because I think your ideas, your insight on issues like this are outstanding.
Thank you.
So, final question here. What areas of business do you see as the growth drivers in this economy over the next 5 years?
To go back to our
Yeah, you
discussion
talked about technology,
I
definitely.
think that this is still where it's going to really be at. If people can come up with ideas that disrupt these sectors that are still kind of in the dark ages,
Right.
some education, law is something that can be very simplified in terms of a lot of legal cases can be streamlined into this is the type of case you have. A computer can generate essentially all of your documents and
Yeah.
really streamline that process. We're seeing this in healthcare as well, where you report your symptoms to something like WebMD and you get a diagnosis that is very accurate. So the
Right.
innovators who come up with the smart technologies are going to really thrive in the next
Right.
several years. Manufacturing, I'm pretty short on. I think that manufacturing and the jobs that we've seen go overseas because of manufacturing being cheaper elsewhere,
Right.
those are gone, and
Yeah.
they're probably to stay. We could
That-
help. We could help a little bit if we got this issue of inversion correct at the national level.
Sure,
You know,
the
so,
tax
Yeah, so
situation,
we have
sure.
the second highest corporate tax in the world. You know, this
Right.
is something that we could be helping the middle class Alabamians and Americans out with by just doing the opposite of inverting,
Right, sure.
which is streamlining our
Sure.
corporate tax code.
Absolutely.
You know, so.
Yeah, and there again, people will react according to what the tax code
That's
is.
right. Absolutely.
You know, I mean, we've seen that. You know this from an economic, historical standpoint. So goes the tax code. So come the changes.
Exactly.
People will work around that.
Yep.
And I think that's a huge issue right
Mhm.
now. So in essence, then, companies that are embracing technology in their industry are the ones that win across the board.
Absolutely, without question.
I can't debate you on that.
Individuals, companies, and even when you get into the public sector, if a public sector firm like Troy University is
Right.
embracing online education, they're going to do a lot better than if they're just trying to hold the line on classical education. Those are the firms
Right.
that are going to get burned in the new normal.
Right. No, I totally agree on that, and I think we're going to see huge changes on the educational
Right.
level. The university, traditional university model will have to change dramatically
That's right.
as time goes forward. Well, I can't thank you enough for spending this time with me.
Great to be visiting.
Hopefully those of you as our viewers have watched this and fully understand why I wanted to have Scott here today. He's at Troy University just doing some incredible things. In terms of the book,
Mm-hmm.
people are interested in the book. How can they How can they download it?
They can look for the Johnson Center. The title of it is Improving Lives in Alabama. We have
Okay.
4 chapters out right now. We
Okay.
have 9 more that are coming just very gradually. We're
Okay.
releasing about 1 per month,
Right.
and that's so that we can just have maximum effect and assure that people are looking at them as
Right.
they come out. So go to business.troy.edu and look for the Johnson Center, and it's all available online, as well as some very easy readable summary findings, core findings that are just 1 page in length,
Right.
in case people don't want to read a really long academic study.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
Perfect.
great. Sure. Well, there is another example of how we at Five Plan Partners believe in the more education and knowledge we can bring to the table, the more we can help people in their overall financial picture. So thank you again.
Thank
I
you.
can't thank you enough
Great
for
to be
being here, and
Yep.
looking forward to additional comments from you later today.
Thank
So
you.
thanks, Scott.
Yep, absolutely.
More information at fiplanpartners.com. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC.